Hi, and welcome to Hardin Life Live. We are the Hardins, and we are a family of counselors and coaches, and a team of counselors and coaches who are committed to helping you live your best life by bringing you some tips from a biblical and therapeutic perspective. So, I am joined today with Vanessa, who is an incredible therapist and new mom in California, but she is with California Counseling and Therapy, and she and her husband live in Santa Barbara, California. But we got to know her when she and her husband were in Alabama. So excited to sit with her today as a fellow therapist, but someone who is really on the front lines of trying to really encourage the body of Christ on how to really live the life that God designed us to live, a full and free life. And we've identified some ways that we get stuck this month. We've been talking about the family code, and we've approached the family code from how men were taught how to express their emotions, how our attachment styles can play into our family code. We've even talked about how to have the conversation with your family if you want to change your role in the family and the family code. But Vanessa, you took us to such a needed place of just even identifying what is the family code versus just beyond some therapeutic jargon, but also a way to understand all this lingo with implicit and explicit rules or overt and covert in your family. But I would just love to hear from you kind of why you chose to address it kind of from this angle, and how it even is relevant in your life as you're growing your family.
Yeah, thanks, Audrey. I'm really grateful to be here. Yeah, family code. That's something I think that is relevant to everyone. It doesn't really matter what culture you come from. It's part of being a human, is that you kind of find guidelines in your family in which how to move forward, how to function. And so I think that's something that is relevant for all of us, whether it's looking back at our family of origin, like our parents and when we were growing up, and kind of the impact that that has on us today, but then also looking forward into the family that we build and create, and whether that's a traditional family or whether that's kind of like church family or friends family, or these groups that we belong to.
Yeah, that's such a great point, that it doesn't have to look like the traditional nuclear family. For whatever season of life you're in, you end up kind of playing a role in whatever community or family you're involved in. And I think we've talked about your family code, or the family that you grew up in, really can influence what role you take on in whatever community that you're in. What would be some examples of that you've seen, or even in your own life?
Right. Well, I think even expanding a little bit on what I had just mentioned about the family of origin where you came from. And I think for a long time, that was my perspective, was, oh, what were the rules that were kind of put on me as I was growing and developing? And then I was able to kind of analyze, oh, this was good for me. Oh, this wasn't good for me. Oh, this is the role that I took on. And it was really crucial for my own development and growth and setting boundaries in relationships. But then now I'm in this new season of life. I have a 1 year old. I've been married for, I think, almost 6 years. And so we are seeing the way that both of our family codes have come together now, and how that influences our family code and how we interact together, and how now we are building our family code for our kids. And that's been something we were just confronted with, something that we both kind of slipped into, didn't realize, wow, we were picking up these roles in within the code that we didn't, neither of us even liked. And it's so funny because you feel like, oh, I'm an adult now. I have control over my life. I'm making my life what I want it to be. But then you don't realize, wow, these things kind of slip in. And the code that we found ourselves in was mom makes the decisions. And so then my role was I'm the decision maker. And part of that was it put this pressure on me where I was feeling I have the pressure that I need to make all the decisions. I need to make all the right ones. And then my husband was feeling like, which I didn't know until we talked about it, was feeling like, gosh, I feel like I'm out of control. I feel like I don't have any control or say in what happens. And that's just not even our hearts. Like my heart is I want to have his input. I think a team is stronger. But because we were just going on with life, everything was moving forward. We didn't take the minute to realize, oh, this is what we're doing. How can we intentionally shape this in a way? And rather than looking at it in the sense of, oh, shame on us, we, didn't do this right. It's like, wow, what an opportunity. We're human, we're growing, and look, we noticed this, and now we have the opportunity to make something new and to be intentional. So that's just a little example of current life.
I love that. I love how even the way that you discussed it with your husband, it was more from the vantage point of curiosity. It's like, this is happening. Let's figure out why this is happening, how this is happening, and do we even like that it's happening? That's so powerful. And versus it coming from a place of anger or criticism or frustration, saying, why am I making all the decisions all the time? When really it sounds like when y'all talked about it, you and your husband were in agreement that this isn't what you wanted.
Right. Well, it definitely took a minute to get to that agreement because I think it was a little bit of that friction, which helped bring it to the surface, where I think both of us, and just knowing your own tendencies, tend to push forward and just say, I'll make the best of this. And I think maybe we realize, oh, we pushed a little bit past what we feel comfortable with. So there was that kind of moment of like, wait, why am I the one? I'm trying so hard to make all the decisions. And he's like, how come I don't have a say? I'm like, oh, isn't this funny? But it did take a minute to get there.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's like you had to kind of address the friction. We have to go with the friction, or at least acknowledge the friction in order to get to a different place that creates a more fertile ground to grow and develop. Yeah, totally.
Right.
I love that. Well, and one thing that you shared in your blog was about the implicit and explicit rules. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what even, that's kind of therapeutic jargon, but
yeah. So implicit rules tend to be what we find in these family rules. And the way that I was kind of defining the family code is the way that we have these implicit rules, which are kind of unsaid, almost silent rules that even though we never talk about them, every single person in the family is very aware of the rules, but it might have never been heard. And there's so much so that you kind of navigate. And an idea that I was having as I was writing was it's almost like these rules are like a board game. And so it's like the rules are like the actual layout of the board game and the die and the cards or whatever. And then the individual players, it's like they only have the options what's laid out in the game. Like you roll the die, you go that many places, you pick up the card when you land on the thing. And what a lot of families don't realize is you don't know that other boards could look different. Your board could look different. You just think this is what life is. This is the board. And so it's that kind of unseen, silent rules. And then that leads into these roles that we pick up, because to add a little bit more of the therapy jargon, the rules and the roles maintain a homeostasis in the family, which is just like stability. And the reason that stability is important is because it keeps us in a familiar place. And as humans, we find that things that are familiar are safe, even if sometimes we might be in a not so helpful pattern. We'll revert back to what's familiar, because it's like, well, even though I'm getting this bad result, at least I know what the bad result is. And so, but if I try something new, then I could get a worse result. So I'm not even going to try. So the homeostasis from the rules keeps us in that place. And so that's what we try to maintain. Yeah.
And the brain actually is pattern seeking. It is always looking for ways to conserve energy, and it can do so by looking for the familiar. And that family role, that family structure, whether it's good for us or not, like best for us as individuals or not, it's what we latch onto because we're used to it, we get it. And I love that you even said that in the beginning. You're like, I started exploring what was the board game, what were the rules of the board game in my family, and was that actually best for Vanessa in order to thrive. And we can't change our environment or make our or position our relationships in such a way to encourage us to flourish unless we do that work of exploration. So guys, I cannot believe that we are out of time. That flew by. But Vanessa, it's so great sitting with you. I really encourage all of you to go to hardinlife.com, check out Vanessa's blog, just to understand more about the process of understanding your own family and the power that you really can obtain by gaining this knowledge. So knowledge is power. So check out our blog, and we will be excited to sit with y'all next week. Thanks again, Vanessa.
Thanks.